I left Ashford on a Tuesday night in October 1959. The sky was the color of old pennies, and the air smelled like burning leaves and diesel fuel. I remember because I stood at the edge of Route 7 with a single suitcase, watching the taillights of the last bus fade into nothing. I didn't know then that I'd never see my hometown again. Not because I wouldn't try to go back, but because 3 days later, Ashford, Kentucky, population 3,847, would simply cease to exist. What happened that night still haunts me to this day. The thing you need to understand about Ashford is that it wasn't supposed to disappear. It was the kind of place that felt permanent, like it had always been there and always would be. Main Street had the same 5 stores since before the war. The diners served coffee so strong it could wake the dead. And everyone knew everyone, not just their names, but their secrets, their heartbreaks, the dreams they'd given up on. My father worked at the mill on the edge of town. 23 years, same shift, same lunch pail with the dent on the left side from where he dropped it in 1944. My mother taught piano lessons in our living room every Tuesday and Thursday. The sound of scales and broken melodies was the soundtrack of my childhood. I was 22 that October, old enough to know I was suffocating, young enough to believe leaving would save me. But what I didn't know was that Ashford itself was dying. We all felt it, I think, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. The mill had been cutting shifts. The mines 20 miles south were closing one by one. Young people were leaving and never coming back. Every year the town got a little quieter, a little emptier, like someone was slowly turning down the volume on a radio. Still, a town doesn't just disappear. People don't just disappear like smoke, except sometimes they do. The morning I decided to leave, I woke up to the sound of my mother crying in the kitchen. It was a soft sound, barely there, the kind of crying you do when you don't want anyone to hear. I stood outside the doorway in my socks, listening, feeling like I was intruding on something sacred and terrible. She wasn't crying about me leaving, not yet. I hadn't told anyone. She was crying because Mrs. Patterson down the street had died in her sleep. 81 years old, born in that house, died in that house, never lived anywhere else. My mother said she couldn't imagine what that must feel like, to live your whole life in one place and never know anything different. I remember thinking, that sounds like a nightmare. Now I think maybe it sounds like peace. I didn't realize it then, but everything was about to change. I spent that day walking through Ashford like I was trying to memorize it. The cracks in the sidewalk on Maple Street, the way the light came through the trees behind the old Baptist church, the smell of Mrs. Chen's laundry hanging on the line, lavender and something sweeter, like hope mixed with soap. The barber shop on the corner where Mr. Ellis had been cutting hair since 1931. The same red and white poles spinning outside, paint chipped and faded but still turning. The same magazines from 5 years ago in the waiting area. Time moved differently in Ashford. Or maybe it didn't move at all. I stopped at Freddie's Diner and ordered a cup of coffee I didn't want. Freddie himself was behind the counter, his apron stained with 30 years of grease and stories. He poured the coffee without asking, thick and black, and slid it across the counter with one hand. "You got that look," he said. I didn't ask what look. I already knew. "I'm leaving tonight," I told him. The words felt strange in my mouth, like I was speaking a language I'd just learned. Freddie nodded slow. He didn't look surprised. He wiped down the counter with a rag that had seen better decades and said, "You won't be the first, won't be the last either." "You ever think about leaving?" I asked. He laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Every damn day since 1947. But leaving and actually going, those are two different things, son." I sipped the coffee. It tasted like regret and old dreams. "You gonna tell your folks?" Freddie asked. I shook my head. He nodded again, like that made sense, like that was the only way it could be done. "This town won't be here forever, you know. Nothing is." I thought he meant the mill closing, the economy changing, the slow death that was already happening. I didn't know he meant something else entirely. I walked past the high school where I'd graduated 4 years earlier, the football field where we'd won exactly one game in 1957 and treated it like we'd won the championship, the parking lot where Sarah Hendricks had kissed me behind her father's truck and told me she was moving to Chicago. Everyone was always moving to Chicago, or Louisville, or Cincinnati, anywhere but here. The movie theater on 4th Street that only showed films after they'd been everywhere else first. We'd seen Rebel Without a Cause in 1957, 2 years after everyone else. Didn't matter. We still lined up around the block. I can still hear the sound of that projector clicking in the dark. The library where Mrs. Morrison had let me hide from the world, reading books about places I'd never seen. She understood, I think, that hunger to be anywhere but where you were. She gave me a book once, On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and said, "Read this, but remember, running away doesn't solve anything. Sometimes it just makes the problems follow you faster." I didn't understand then. I was starting to. Nobody believed what we saw that night. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I left a note on the kitchen table. Short, simple, the kind of note that says everything and nothing at the same time. "Gone to find something better. Don't worry, I'll write. Love you." I didn't write, not for a long time. And when I finally tried, there was nowhere to send the letters. The house was quiet. My father was working late shift. My mother was at evening Bible study at the church. I was grateful for that. Grateful I didn't have to see their faces, didn't have to watch my mother try not to cry or my father pretend he understood. I walked through the house one last time, touched the walls, the door frames, the piano keys that my mother's hands had worn smooth. Every surface held a memory. Every room echoed with voices I'd never hear again. That smell, that silence, it never left me. I took my suitcase, packed light, just clothes and a few books, and walked out the front door. Didn't lock it. We never locked doors in Ashford. There was no need. Everyone trusted everyone. Or maybe we just had nothing worth stealing.
I walked to the bus stop at the edge of town just as the sun was setting. The sky was doing that thing it does in October, turning colors that don't have names, orange and purple and something darker underneath. The air was cold enough to see your breath, but warm enough that you didn't need a coat yet. There were only 3 other people waiting for the bus. Old Mr. Hernandez, who was going to visit his daughter in Cincinnati. He'd made this trip every October for 12 years, ever since his daughter had moved away. Every year he said it would be the last. Every year he came back. A young woman I didn't recognize, holding a baby that wouldn't stop crying. She looked exhausted. Looked like she'd been running from something. Maybe she had been. And a man in a suit who kept checking his watch like he was late for something that hadn't happened yet. His shoes were too clean for Ashford, too expensive. He didn't belong here. The bus was 20 minutes late. When it finally came, it looked older than the town itself. All rusted metal and dirty windows that turned the world gray. The engine coughed like a dying man. The brakes screamed when it stopped. The driver didn't smile, didn't say hello, just opened the doors and waited. I climbed on, found a seat near the back, put my suitcase on the floor between my feet. The vinyl seat was cracked and patched with duct tape. It smelled like cigarettes and regret and 1,000 goodbyes. And as the bus pulled away, I looked out the window one last time at Ashford, Kentucky. The streetlights were just starting to come on, warm yellow pools in the gathering dark. I could see the outline of the mill in the distance, smoke rising from the stacks like prayers nobody was listening to. I could see the church steeple, the water tower with Ashford painted in letters that were starting to fade. The last thing I saw was Freddie's Diner, the neon sign flickering, open in red letters that buzzed like dying bees. Then we turned a corner and Ashford disappeared behind the trees.
I can still hear the sound of those bus wheels on gravel when I close my eyes. We were about 15 miles out when the driver suddenly stopped the bus. Just stopped right in the middle of the road. No warning, no explanation, no reason. Everyone jerked forward. The baby started screaming. The man in the suit swore under his breath. Mr. Hernandez grabbed the seat in front of him to keep from falling. "What the hell?" someone said. The driver didn't answer. He was staring at something in the rearview mirror, his face gone pale. His hands were shaking on the wheel, actually shaking. I could see them trembling from where I sat. I turned around and looked out the back window. The sky above Ashford was glowing. Not like sunset, not like fire, like something I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. A strange, greenish light that seemed to pulse and breathe. It looked alive somehow, aware, like it was watching us. "What is that?" the young woman whispered. Nobody answered because nobody knew. The light grew brighter, stronger. The whole horizon behind us turned that sickly green color, like the sky was infected with something, poisoned, dying. And then, for just a moment, I swear I heard something. A sound that wasn't a sound. A vibration in my chest, in my bones, in the air itself, like the world was humming at a frequency just below hearing. It made my teeth ache, made my head swim. The driver sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a minute. Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and started driving again. Faster this time, faster than was safe on these dark country roads, like he was running from something. I kept watching out the back window until Ashford disappeared over the horizon. The green light faded with it, swallowed by distance and darkness, and I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination, just the fear of leaving home playing tricks on my mind. Maybe northern lights, maybe some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. But what I found next still gives me chills. I stayed with my uncle in Louisville that first week. He lived in a small apartment above a bakery on 3rd Street. The smell of fresh bread woke me every morning. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. It just reminded me I was somewhere else, somewhere that wasn't home. My uncle didn't ask many questions. He was good like that. My father's younger brother, the one who'd left Ashford in 1942 and never looked back. He'd worked in factories during the war, met a woman, lost her to tuberculosis, never remarried, never went home. He gave me the spare room, barely more than a closet with a cot, and helped me find work at a print shop downtown. The pay was terrible, but it was something. It was a start. It was better than the mill, better than staying in a dying town watching it slowly suffocate, or so I thought. 3 days after I left, I tried calling home. Used the payphone on the corner, fed it nickels with shaking hands, dialed the number I'd known my whole life. My mother always answered on the 3rd ring, always, like clockwork. The phone rang and rang and rang. No answer. I hung up, waited 5 minutes, tried again. Ring, ring, ring. Nothing. I told myself they were probably mad at me, probably saw my note and decided not to answer, probably wanted me to sweat a little, wanted me to understand what I'd done. I'd call again later. I called every day for a week, different times, morning, afternoon, evening, late at night, thinking maybe I'd catch him at different moments, breakfast, dinner, before bed. Nothing, never anything, just that hollow ringing that goes on forever. On day 8, I called the operator and asked her to check the line. She put me on hold for a long time. I stood there in that phone booth on 3rd Street, watching people walk by. Normal people. People who still had hometowns. People whose parents still existed. When the operator came back, her voice had changed. Careful, quiet, the way people talk when they're about to tell you something you don't want to hear. Sir, I'm showing that number as disconnected. That's impossible. It's my parents' house. They've had that number for 20 years, longer, since before I was born. I understand, sir, but according to our records, that entire exchange has been disconnected. The entire exchange? Yes, sir. The whole Ashford prefix is shown as inactive. My hands were shaking. Can you connect me to someone else in Ashford? Anyone? Try the diner, Fletty's Diner. They have a phone. Another long pause. I could hear her typing something, papers rustling. Then, carefully, Sir, I'm not showing Ashford, Kentucky in our system at all. What do you mean? I mean there are no phone numbers currently active in that area. That's not possible. There are almost 4,000 people there. They can't all have disconnected phones. The operator was quiet for a moment. Then, even more carefully, Sir, I'm not showing Ashford, Kentucky in our system at all. I didn't realize it then, but everything had already changed. I drove back the following weekend, borrowed my uncle's truck, a rusty Ford that burned oil and complained every mile, and drove those 80 miles in a fog of confusion and growing dread. I kept telling myself there was an explanation. Phone lines down, some kind of technical error, a storm maybe, ice on the wires. These things happened. But the weather was clear. Perfect October sky, blue and endless. And somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew it, already felt it. That terrible knowing that you try to push away because accepting it means accepting something impossible. The road was the same, Route 7, cracked and worn, winding through the hills like it always had. The same potholes, the same curves, the same trees leaning over the asphalt like they were trying to swallow it. All still there, all exactly as they should be. And then I reached the turnoff for Ashford. The sign was still there, Ashford, Kentucky. Population 3,847. A good place to call home. The sign was weathered, faded, the paint peeling, but it was there. Proof. Evidence. See, I thought it existed. It was real. But when I turned on the main street, there was nothing there. Some memories don't fade. They just wait.
Not nothing like abandoned. Not nothing like destroyed. Not nothing like evacuated or bombed or burned down. Just nothing. Empty. Empty fields where buildings used to be. Grass growing tall and wild like it had been there for years, decades, forever. No rubble, no foundations, no broken glass or rusted metal or any sign that anything had ever existed there at all. I stopped the truck in the middle of what should have been Main Street, got out, stood there turning in circles, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to make my brain accept what my eyes were telling it. Freddie's Diner, gone. Not burned down, not torn down, just gone. There was a field of wildflowers where it should have been. Queen Anne's lace and goldenrod swaying in the breeze, purple asters and yellow black-eyed Susans. Beautiful, peaceful. Wrong. The movie theater, gone. Trees growing where the parking lot used to be. Old trees, not saplings. Trees with trunks 3 feet thick. Trees that looked like they'd been there for 50 years or more. The mill, gone. A grove of trees stood where the parking lot used to be, where my father had parked his truck every morning for 23 years, where he'd walked in at dawn and walked out at dusk, covered in sawdust, smelling like pine and sweat and hard work. The church, the water tower, the high school, the library, the barber shop, the houses, my street, my house, all of it. Gone. Erased. Like someone had taken a giant eraser and wiped Ashford, Kentucky right off the face of the earth. But the road remained. Route 7, cutting through what was now just empty hills and forests. Like someone had carefully erased the town but forgot about the highway. Or like the highway was somehow more real than the town had ever been. I walked for hours. Followed the ghost outline of streets that no longer existed. I knew where everything should be. I'd lived there my whole life. I could walk from my house to the diner with my eyes closed, could navigate every alley and shortcut and secret path. But there was nothing to walk to anymore. Nothing to navigate toward. Just grass and trees and flowers and the sound of wind through leaves. I found a place that might have been my backyard. The geography felt right. The slope of the land, the way the trees stood. There was even a tree that looked familiar. Same shape, same angle, same gnarled branches reaching toward the sky. I remembered climbing that tree when I was 7, falling out of it when I was 9 and breaking my arm. My father carrying me to Dr. Morrison's office on Main Street,
Me crying the whole way. Him telling me I was brave, telling me it would be okay. I put my hand on the bark. It was real, solid, warm from the sun, the texture rough against my palm, real in a way that couldn't be denied. But my house was gone. My street was gone. Everything was gone. I stood there in the grass, in what should have been my living room, where my mother taught piano lessons every Tuesday and Thursday for 15 years, and I screamed. Just screamed until my throat was raw and my voice was gone. Screamed at the empty fields and the uncaring trees and the sky that offered no answers. Nobody heard me. There was nobody to hear. I drove to the next town over, Millerton, population 6,400, about 12 miles north, close enough that we'd played them in football every year. Close enough that people from Ashford went there sometimes for things we didn't have at home. A hardware store, a proper grocery, a doctor who'd gone to medical school somewhere that mattered. I walked into the sheriff's office with my head spinning and my heart trying to climb out of my chest. My hands were shaking, my legs felt like water. The deputy at the front desk looked up from his paperwork. Young guy, maybe 30. Bored expression that said nothing interesting ever happened here. Clean uniform, coffee stain on the collar, wedding ring on his left hand. "Help you?" he asked. "I need to report something," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too high, too tight, like I was speaking through broken glass. My hometown, it's gone. The whole town just disappeared. The deputy's expression didn't change. "Which town?" "Ashford, about 15 miles south of here. There were almost 4,000 people, houses, businesses, a mill, a church. Now there's nothing. No buildings, no people, nothing. Just empty fields like nothing was ever there." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled out a map from his desk drawer, unfolded it slowly, ran his finger along Route 7, tracing the road between Millerton and Louisville. "Sir, there's no town called Ashford on this map." "It's there. I insist. It's always been there. I grew up there. I left 9 days ago. I can take you there right now. I can show you." The deputy looked at me like I was either crazy or pulling an elaborate prank. Like he was trying to decide which one. Like it mattered. "Sir, I've lived in Millerton my whole life. I drive Route 7 3 times a week. There's never been a town called Ashford between here and Louisville." That smell, that silence, it never left me. I showed him my driver's license, pulled it out with shaking hands. Address, 412 Maple Street, Ashford, Kentucky. He looked at it, frowned, held it up to the light like he thought it might be fake. "That's a Kentucky license, all right, but this address," he trailed off. "What?" I demanded. "What about it?" "We can look it up in the county records," he said slowly, carefully, like he was talking to someone dangerous, someone unstable. "But I'm telling you, there's no Maple Street, no Ashford." We went to the county clerk's office. It was in the basement of the courthouse, all stone walls and fluorescent lights that hummed like insects. An older woman with gray hair and reading glasses helped us search through property records, census data, maps going back to 1920. She pulled out book after book, ledger after ledger, maps yellowed with age, documents that smelled like dust and forgotten time. Nothing. No record of Ashford, Kentucky. No property records. No census data. No tax records. No incorporation documents. Not even a mention in historical documents, in county histories, in any official record from any year. The clerk looked at me with something between pity and suspicion. "Son, are you sure you didn't grow up somewhere else? Maybe you're confused. It happens. Towns change names sometimes. Maybe you're thinking of a different place." "I'm not confused," I said. But even as I said it, doubt was creeping in. That terrible doubt that makes you question your own memory, your own sanity, that makes you wonder if your brain has somehow betrayed you in the worst possible way. "What about my parents?" I asked desperately. "John and Mary Ashwood. They lived there. They still live there. They have to be in some record somewhere. Birth certificates, marriage license, something." More searching, more ledgers, more maps and documents and yellowed papers. Nothing. No record of John Ashwood, no record of Mary Ashwood, no marriage license, no birth certificates, no death certificates. Nothing. Like they'd never existed at all. I drove back to Louisville in silence. My uncle took one look at my face and poured me a whiskey without asking if I wanted it, poured himself one too. We sat at his kitchen table as the sun went down and the room filled with shadows. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. He was good at that, at listening, at not judging, at just being present. When he finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I believe you." "You do?" "I believe you believe it," he clarified. "But, son, the mind can play tricks, especially when you're under stress. Leaving home, starting over, that's hard. That's one of the hardest things a person can do. Maybe you need to see someone, a doctor, someone who can help you work through this." "I'm not crazy." "You didn't say you were crazy, but maybe you're remembering things differently than they were. Maybe Ashford wasn't as big as you thought. Maybe it was smaller. Maybe—" "My parents," I interrupted. "What about my parents? Where are they? If Ashford didn't exist, where did I come from? Who raised me? Where did I go to school? Where did I live for 22 years? He didn't have an answer for that. Nobody did. I spent the next 3 months trying to find proof, any proof, anything that would confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I looked for other people who had left Ashford, searched phone books, visited nearby towns, asked around at diners and gas stations and anywhere people gathered. "Do you know anyone from Ashford? Anyone who used to live there?" Blank stares, confused expressions. Never heard of it. I tried to find official records, birth certificates, tax documents, school records, my high school diploma. I had it in my suitcase when I left. I knew I had. I remember packing it. But when I went through my things, systematically, desperately, it wasn't there. And when I tried to contact the State Board of Education, they had no record of Ashford High School, no record of any school in Ashford, Kentucky. I went to the library and searched through old newspapers. Surely there would be something, a mention of the mill, a high school football score, a wedding announcement, an obituary, a classified ad, something, anything. I spent days going through microfiche, every newspaper from every town within 50 miles. My eyes burned, my head ached. I searched year by year, month by month, page by page. Nothing. No mention of Ashford, no mention of the mill, no mention of any business or person or event from my hometown. It was like Ashford, Kentucky had never existed, like it had been erased from history itself, not just physically, not just from the land, but from every record, every document, every mention, from human memory itself. But I had memories, 22 years of memories. I could close my eyes and walk through every street. I could smell my mother's perfume and taste Freddie's coffee and hear the sound of the mill whistle at shift change. I could feel the rough wood of my front porch under my bare feet. Could hear the creak of the third step that always needed fixing. Could see the way the light came through my bedroom window in the morning, dust motes dancing in the golden air. Those things were real, weren't they? I met Sarah in April of 1960. She worked at a bookstore on 4th Street, and she had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. Brown and warm and deep, like you could fall into them and never worry about hitting bottom.
We started talking one day when I came in looking for maps. I was still searching, still trying to prove Ashford existed, still trying to prove I wasn't crazy. She helped me find what I needed. Didn't ask why I needed so many maps. Didn't ask why my hands were shaking. Just helped. I came back the next day, and the next. Sometimes I bought books. Sometimes I just browsed. Really, I just wanted to be around her. Around someone who didn't look at me with pity or suspicion. Someone who didn't know my story yet. She didn't think I was crazy. Or if she did, she never said it. Never made me feel small or broken or less than human. "Tell me about it," she said one evening over coffee. We'd been seeing each other for a few weeks. She knew something was weighing on me, something I hadn't told her yet. "Tell me about whatever it is that haunts you." So I did. I told her about Main Street and the diner and the church bell that rang every Sunday morning. I told her about the mill and the way the whole town smelled like sawdust and wood pulp. I told her about my parents and Mrs. Patterson and the day I decided to leave. I told her about the green light in the sky and coming back to find nothing. I told her everything. She listened. Really listened, not planning what to say next, not judging, just listening. And when I was done, she reached across the table and took my hand. "It sounds beautiful," she said. "It was," I said. "I think it was. Sometimes I wonder if I made it all up. If I created this perfect little town in my head and convinced myself it was real. If I'm just crazy." "But you remember it so clearly," she said. "That's what scares me. What if memories can be lies? What if everything I think I know about myself is built on something that never existed? What if I'm not who I think I am?" She squeezed my hand. "You're real. Sitting here with me. That's real. Whatever happened before, whatever Ashford was or wasn't, you're here now. That matters." It was the kindest thing anyone had ever said to me.
Sarah and I got married in June of 1961. We had a small ceremony at the courthouse with my uncle as witness. I didn't invite my parents because I didn't know where they were, didn't know if they were even alive, didn't know if they'd ever existed outside of my own mind. That was the hardest part. Not the missing town, not the missing records, but the missing people. My mother's voice, my father's hands, my whole childhood. Were they real? Were they somewhere wondering what happened to me? Or had they never existed at all? Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night convinced I'd dreamed the entire thing. The town, the people, the life I thought I'd lived there. Maybe I'd always been in Louisville. Maybe I'd never left because there was nowhere to leave from. Maybe I'd been crazy my whole life and just didn't know it yet. But then I'd remember that bus ride, the green light in the sky, the way the driver's hands shook on the steering wheel, the fear in his eyes when he looked in that rearview mirror. That was real. I know it was real. I have to believe it was real. Years passed. Sarah and I had 2 children, a boy named Michael and a girl named Ellen. We bought a small house in the suburbs, white picket fence, 2-car garage, the American dream we'd been promised. I worked my way up at the print shop, eventually became a manager. We had a good life, a normal life. Birthday parties and little league games and family dinners. We went to church on Sundays, paid our taxes, voted in every election. We were good Americans, living good American lives. But I never stopped thinking about Ashford. Every few years I'd drive out to Route 7, park where the town should have been, walk through the fields and forests, looking for something, anything, a piece of concrete, a rusted pipe, a fragment of glass, a sign that I wasn't losing my mind. I never found anything. The land itself seemed wrong somehow, too wild, too untouched, like humans had never been there at all. No evidence of roads, no remnants of foundations, no trash or metal or any of the debris that humans leave behind. Just earth and trees and grass, ancient and indifferent. Once I brought a shovel. Thought maybe if I dug deep enough, I'd find something. Proof, evidence, truth. Something that would prove to myself, if nobody else, that I hadn't invented my entire childhood. I dug for hours. My hands blistered, my back screamed, sweat poured down my face and soaked my shirt. I dug until the hole was 6 feet deep, and I was standing at the bottom, covered in dirt, crying like I hadn't cried since I was a child. There was nothing there, just soil and rocks and roots, layers of earth that looked undisturbed for centuries. No concrete, no bricks, no pipes, no evidence that anything human had ever touched this ground. Sarah found me like that. She'd followed me, worried. She climbed down into the hole and held me while I sobbed. Didn't say anything. Didn't tell me it was okay or that I needed to let it go. Just held me. Just let me grieve for something I could never prove existed. Maybe that's what America really was. Imperfect, but alive.
In 1975, something changed. Something that made me realize I might not be alone.
I was reading the newspaper one morning when I saw a small article buried on page 12. It was about a man in Oregon who claimed his entire neighborhood had disappeared overnight. He went to bed in a suburban development and woke up in the middle of a forest. Houses gone, streets gone, neighbors gone, everything. The article was dismissive, clearly thought the man was delusional or seeking attention. The reporter used words like confused and mentally unstable and possible early onset dementia. But something about it made my hands shake, made my heart race, made me feel less alone than I'd felt in 16 years. I cut out the article, put it in a folder I'd been keeping, a folder full of nothing. My failed searches, my dead-end inquiries, my desperate attempts to prove I wasn't insane. Now, it had one piece of paper, one other person who'd experienced something impossible. Over the next few years, I found more articles. Never front-page news, always buried, always treated like jokes or hoaxes, always dismissed. A woman in Maine whose childhood town had vanished. She'd gone away to college and come back to find nothing. No town, no family, no past. A man in Texas who remembered a city that nobody else did. He had photos, he said, proof, but when reporters looked at the photos, they just showed empty desert. A family in Montana who insisted they'd lived in a town called Riverside for 20 years. But Riverside wasn't on any map, wasn't in any record, didn't exist. Most people dismissed them, called them crazy, said they were misremembering or making things up for attention or suffering from some kind of shared delusion. But I recognized something in their stories, a particular kind of desperation, a specific flavor of grief, the loss of not just a place, but the proof that you ever existed in it, the loss of your own history. I tried to contact some of them, wrote letters, made phone calls. Most never responded. A few did, but their families intercepted, told me to leave them alone, said they were sick, confused, and didn't need people encouraging their delusions. One woman's daughter screamed at me over the phone. "My mother is 70 years old, and you're making her worse. She's confused. She needs help, not people like you feeding her fantasies." I tried to explain, tried to tell her that maybe her mother wasn't confused. Maybe something impossible had happened. Maybe we were all witnesses to something we couldn't explain. She hung up on me. Only one person wrote back. Her name was Margaret. She was 63 years old and lived in Vermont. She remembered a town called Riverside that had existed until 1947, when she was 16. She'd left to visit an aunt in the next town over, came back 2 days later and found nothing. Her letter was 8 pages long, handwritten in shaky script. She described Riverside in detail, the way I described Ashford. The streets, the people, the ordinary miracles of small-town life, the way light looked on water, the smell of bread from the bakery, the sound of children playing in summer. And then she described the night it disappeared. She'd seen a light in the sky too, that same strange green glow, pulsing, breathing, alive. She wrote, I've spent 30 years trying to prove it existed. 30 years being told I'm crazy, that I'm confused, that my memories are false. But I know what I remember. I know what I lost. I just don't know why. Neither did I. Nobody believed what we saw that night. Margaret and I corresponded for 3 years. Letters back and forth, sometimes twice a week. We shared memories, compared details, tried to find patterns, tried to understand what had happened to us. She'd found a few others over the years, people who'd lost towns, lost cities, lost entire chunks of their lives, but most were scared to talk, scared of being institutionalized, scared of losing what little credibility they had left.
"We're ghosts," Margaret wrote once. "Ghosts haunting a world that doesn't remember us, doesn't remember the places we came from." She had a theory, not a good theory, not one that made sense, but a theory. "What if they're still there?" she wrote. "What if Riverside and Ashford and all the other places, what if they didn't disappear? What if we're the ones who left? What if somehow we slipped into a different version of the world, a world where those places never existed?" I didn't know what to think about that. It sounded crazy. But then again, everything about this was crazy. Towns don't just disappear. People don't just vanish. Records don't just erase themselves. Unless they do. Unless the impossible is more real than we want to believe. Margaret died in 1978. A stroke, her daughter wrote to me. The letter was cold, formal. It asked me to please stop sending letters that upset her and fed her delusions. My mother was a good woman, but she was sick, confused. Whatever she told you about Riverside was a symptom of her illness, not reality. I hope you can understand that and move on with your life. I never wrote back, but I kept all of Margaret's letters. Read them sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep. Found comfort in knowing I wasn't alone, that somewhere out there, someone else had understood. Now she was gone, and I was alone again. Sarah worried about me. I could see it in the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking, the concern in her eyes, the careful way she'd changed the subject when I started talking about Ashford. "It's been almost 20 years, she said once, gently. "Maybe it's time to let it go." "How?" I asked. "How do you let go of your entire childhood, your parents, the first 22 years of your life?" "By building something new. By being present for the life you have now, for me, for the kids, for this family we've built together." She was right. I knew she was right, but I couldn't let it go, couldn't stop searching, couldn't accept that the first part of my life had simply been erased from existence. Some things you can't let go of, some losses you carry forever. I retired from the print shop in 1986. Sarah and I traveled, saw things I'd never imagined seeing as a boy in Ashford. The Grand Canyon, vast and ancient and impossible. The Pacific Ocean, stretching to the horizon, endless blue. New York City at night, a million lights burning against the dark. But I always carried a map, and I always checked, just in case. Just in case one day, Ashford, Kentucky would suddenly reappear on paper, like it had never been gone,
like the world had been wrong and had finally corrected itself. It never did. Our son became a doctor, our daughter a teacher. They had children of their own. We became grandparents. Life moved forward with or without my permission, like a river that doesn't care what's in its way. But sometimes at family dinners, I'd catch myself starting a sentence with, "When I was growing up in Ashford," and I'd see the quick glance between my children, the silent communication that said, "Dad's doing it again." They humored me, loved me despite what they saw as a harmless obsession, my own form of nostalgia taken too far, an imaginary hometown they'd grown up hearing about like other children hear fairy tales. They didn't believe it was real. Sometimes I wondered if they were right not to.
Sarah died in 2003. Cancer. It was quick, which was both a mercy and a cruelty. One day she was there, laughing at something on television, planning our 50th anniversary trip. The next day, she was in the hospital. 3 weeks later, she was gone. At the funeral, I realized that she was the only person left who had believed me. Not believe that Ashford was real, I'm not sure she ever fully believed that, but believe that I believed it. Believe that my grief was real even if the town wasn't. Believe that I was sane even if my memories were impossible. Without her, the world felt emptier, colder, like another piece of my past had been erased, like I was disappearing, bit by bit, until soon there'd be nothing left of me at all. I was 77 years old, and most of my life was behind me, and I still didn't know what had happened to my hometown, to my parents, to the first 22 years of my existence. I didn't know if I'd ever find out. In 2008, something impossible happened. Something that changed everything. I was in a nursing home by then. Not because I needed much care, but because I was alone and my children worried. It was a nice enough place. Clean, quiet, full of old people waiting to die, telling stories nobody really listened to anymore. One day, a new resident moved in. A man about my age, maybe a few years older. The staff said his name was Frank. He kept to himself mostly, didn't talk much, just sat by the window staring at nothing, like he was looking for something that wasn't there. I didn't pay much attention at first. Then one day, I heard him mention something to a nurse. Something that made my blood stop cold. "I'm from Riverside," he said. My heart stopped. Actually stopped for a moment. Then started racing so fast I thought it might burst. "Riverside," I said, too loud. Everyone in the common room looked at me. Frank turned, looked at me for the first time. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray and heavy and full of old pain. "You know it?" he asked. His voice was careful, guarded, like he'd learned not to trust people who said they knew. "No," I said slowly, "but I knew someone who did. A woman named Margaret. She wrote to me about it. For 3 years, until she died." Something changed in Frank's face. His whole body went rigid.
Margaret Sutton? I didn't remember her last name. Didn't know if she'd ever told me, but I nodded anyway. She was my cousin, Frank said. His voice was barely above a whisper. She left town the day before it disappeared. Came back and found nothing. Spent the rest of her life trying to prove it existed. She wrote to me, I said, for 3 years, because I had the same thing happen. My hometown, Ashford, Kentucky, gone, disappeared, erased. Frank stared at me, really stared, like he was trying to decide if I was real or another cruel trick of an aging mind, like he'd been fooled before and couldn't afford to be fooled again. Then he started crying. Just sat there in his wheelchair and wept, deep, gasping sobs that shook his whole body. And I understood, because I felt like crying too. After all these years, after all the searching and doubting and wondering if I was insane, after all the loneliness, I'd found someone who knew. Someone who understood. Someone who believed. I can still hear the sound of his voice when he said, I thought I was the only one. Frank and I talked every day after that. Compared stories. Compared details. His town had disappeared in 1947. Mine in 1959. Different places, different times, but the same impossible event, the same green light, the same erasure, the same grief.
He'd seen it too. That light in the sky, that strange pulsing glow that seemed alive. He'd been out hunting with friends when it happened, miles from town. Came back 3 days later and found his entire hometown gone, erased like it had never existed. I thought I was losing my mind, he said. Everyone told me I was. Doctors, family, friends. They all said I was confused, that there never was a town called Riverside, that I'd made it all up, that I needed help. How many of us are there? I asked. How many people lost their hometowns? I don't know, Frank said. Margaret tried to find out, spent years researching. She found maybe a dozen stories, all dismissed, all treated like delusions or hoaxes. But she thought there were more. People too scared to come forward, too scared of being called crazy. Why, I asked, why did it happen? What took our towns? Frank shook his head. I don't know. Margaret had theories. Government experiments, atomic testing, doors to other dimensions, time slips. She read every conspiracy theory, every piece of strange history she could find. But she never found an answer that made sense. Maybe there is no answer, I said. Maybe? Or maybe the answer is something we can't understand. Something beyond explanation, something that doesn't fit into the world as we know it. We sat in silence for a long time. Two old men who'd lost everything, who'd spent their entire lives being told they were crazy, who'd finally found each other at the very end. Thank you, Frank said eventually.
For what? For believing me? For not thinking I'm insane? Thank you, I said, for the same thing. We spent our days trading memories, not trying to solve the mystery anymore. We were too old for that, too tired. Just remembering. Keeping our hometowns alive the only way we could. Through stories. Through the act of remembering together. Frank told me about the river that ran through Riverside. The way it looked in summer, green and slow, reflecting the sky like glass. The rope swing that hung from the old oak tree. The girl he'd loved who worked at her father's general store. Her name was Elizabeth. She had red hair and freckles and a laugh that made the whole world seem brighter. I told him about Freddie's diner, about the coffee that tasted like home, about my mother's piano lessons and my father's lunch pail, and the mill whistle that marked time for the entire town. About the way Main Street looked at dusk when the streetlights were just coming on and the world felt safe and small and knowable. The staff thought we were just two old men lost in nostalgia. They didn't know we were archaeologists, excavating the ruins of places that existed only in our minds, keeping the dead alive, refusing to let the past be completely erased. Do you think they're really gone? Or do you think they're still out there somewhere, in some other version of the world? I don't know, I said. Maybe there are, because if they're not, then where did we come from? Who were we? What were we? Ghosts. Just like Margaret said. Ghosts haunting a world that doesn't remember us. Maybe that's all we were. Maybe that's all we'd ever been.
Frank died in 2012. I was the only one at his funeral besides his daughter and her family. They thanked me for being his friend, said I'd made his last years better. They had no idea how much he'd given me. After he was gone, I thought a lot about what happens to places that no longer exist. Do they live on in memory, or do they truly disappear when the last person who remembers them dies? I'm 92 years old now, the last person from Ashford, Kentucky, as far as I know. The sole survivor of a place that never was. When I die, what happens to my hometown? Does it die too? Does my mother's piano music fade forever? Does Freddie's coffee stop pouring? Does the mill whistle finally go silent? Or does Ashford live on somehow, in some other place, some other time? Are my parents still there, wondering what happened to their son who left one Tuesday night and never came home? I don't know. I'll probably never know. I've stopped trying to find answers. I've stopped trying to prove anything. At some point, you realize that proof doesn't matter. Truth doesn't need validation from the outside world. It exists whether anyone believes it or not. I know what I remember. I know where I came from. And I know that one Tuesday night
In October 1959, I left my hometown and it disappeared forever. Maybe I caused it somehow. Maybe my leaving was the catalyst. Maybe Ashford existed only as long as we all believed in it together. And when I broke that spell, the whole thing unraveled. Or maybe it had nothing to do with me at all. Maybe these things just happen. Places disappear, people vanish, history gets rewritten, and we're left with nothing but memories that nobody else shares. I used to think that was the cruelest thing imaginable. To remember something that nobody else remembers. To mourn something that nobody else mourns. But now I think maybe it's a gift. A strange, painful gift. Because as long as I remember, Ashford isn't completely gone. It lives in me, in the stories I tell, in the memories I carry. My children don't believe. My grandchildren think it's a sweet story Grandpa tells, a nostalgic fairy tale about an imaginary town. But I know better. Sometimes, late at night, when the nursing home is quiet and everyone else is sleeping, I close my eyes and walk through Ashford one more time. I start at the edge of town, where Route 7 becomes Main Street. I walk past the church with its white steeple reaching toward heaven, past Mrs. Chen's house with the lavender-scented laundry, past the mill where my father worked for 23 years. I stop at Freddie's Diner, push open the door, smell the coffee and hear the sizzle of bacon on the griddle. Freddie nods at me from behind the counter, pours me a cup without asking. The coffee is hot and strong and tastes like home. I walk to my house on Maple Street. My mother is inside playing piano. I can hear it through the windows. A student struggling through a scale. Then my mother's hands showing how it should sound. Perfect, effortless, beautiful. My father comes home from the mill. I can see him walking up the street, lunch pail in hand, dust on his work clothes. He waves at neighbors, stops to talk to Mr. Hernandez about the weather. Takes his time, because there's no rush in Ashford. There never was. And for a moment, I'm there, really there, not remembering, experiencing, living in a place that no longer exists outside of these journeys I take in the dark. Then I open my eyes and I'm back in the nursing home, back in this world where Ashford, Kentucky never was. But it doesn't matter, because in that moment, in that space between sleep and waking, Ashford is real. My parents are real. My childhood is real. And that's enough. That has to be enough. I've written this story down because I want there to be a record, something that survives after I'm gone. Proof that Ashford existed, even if only in memory, even if only for one person. I don't expect you to believe me. I'm not sure I'd believe me either if I were you. It sounds impossible. It sounds like the delusions of an old man whose mind is slipping. But every word is true, or as true as memory can be, as true as the heart that holds it. Ashford, Kentucky existed from some time in the 1800s until October 1959. Population 3,847. A good place to call home. A mill town that smelled like sawdust and diesel fuel. A town full of ordinary people living ordinary lives, not knowing they were temporary, not knowing they'd be erased from history. My parents lived there, worked there, raised me there, taught me how to be a person, taught me about love and loss and the quiet dignity of everyday life. Then one Tuesday night, I left, and 3 days later, they were gone. The town was gone. Everything was gone. I don't know why. I don't know how. I just know it happened. And I know that somewhere, in some version of the world that I can't reach anymore, Ashford still exists. My parents are still there, still wondering what happened to their son who left and never came home. If there's any justice in the universe, maybe when I die, I'll go back there. Back to that Tuesday night in October. Back to the edge of Route 7 with my suitcase in my hand. And this time, I'll turn around, walk back into town, go home to my mother and father, stay in the place I was always meant to be. This time, I won't leave, and Ashford, Kentucky will never disappear. That night, I realized something I should have known all along. Sometimes the things we lose are what define who we were. These stories aren't history. They're reminders of the America we once believed in. Small towns where everyone knew your name, where time moved slower, where you could smell your neighbor's laundry and taste coffee that had been brewing since dawn, where a life could be simple and still be complete. Maybe those places never truly existed. Maybe they were always just dreams, collective nostalgia for something we never really had. Maybe Ashford was never as perfect as I remember. Maybe my memory has smoothed over the rough edges, polished the pain, until all that's left is golden. Or maybe those places were real. Maybe they existed exactly as we remembered them. And maybe something took them from us. Something we can't explain or understand or fight against. Either way, they're gone now. Those small towns, those simple lives, that America. All that remains are the stories, the memories, the voices of old men like me trying to keep the past alive by speaking it into being one more time. Time moves on, but the memories, they never stopped echoing. And as long as someone remembers, as long as someone tells the story, Ashford, Kentucky isn't completely gone. It lives on in the space between what was and what we wished had been. In the gap between memory and truth. In the heart of an old man who once left his hometown on a Tuesday night in October and spent the rest of his life trying to find his way back home.